Welcome to the Covered Bridges in New Hampshire podcast, where we discuss all things related to covered bridges in the Granite State. Here's your host, Kim Chandler.
Hello, Covered Bridge people, and welcome to the podcast. Today we're speaking with Will Truax, timber framer, bridgewright, and preservation carpenter. Will discusses his decades of work in timber restoration, his involvement with the Timber Framers Guild, and the Guild's 2011 Covered Bridge project in Chester. Here we go. In this episode, we'll explore the Timber Framers Guild, a nonprofit educational organization dedicated to the craft of timber framing. The Guild serves as a hub of information and design for professionals, enthusiasts, and the general public. In 2011, they built an authentic covered bridge in Chester, adding to New Hampshire's rich covered bridge heritage. Today we're speaking with timber framer, bridgewright, and preservation carpenter Will Truax. Will has been working in timber restoration and historic preservation since 1989. He is the proprietor of Truax Timberwright Woodworks in Center Barnstead and has worked on carpentry projects across the United States and the United Kingdom. He has also demonstrated traditional skills at many history museums, including Canterbury Shaker Village, Colonial Williamsburg, the New Hampshire Farm Museum, Fort No. 4, and the Weald and Downland. He has been subcontracted on multiple covered bridge restorations nationwide and in New Hampshire, including the Ashwelot, Coombs, Corbin, Blair, Sillyville Bog, Kentucky Railroad, and Mount Orne bridges, and he served as the lead instructor in the Timber Framers Guild Community Building Project, which built the Wason Pond Bridge. Will is a member of the Timber Framers Guild and the National Society for the Preservation of Covered Bridges, and he is the author of the Bridgewright blog. So welcome to the podcast, Will.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for talking to me today. I'm excited to talk to you about your history with covered bridges. So let's start by talking about your interest in historic covered bridges. When did that start for you?
For me, it began as a boy. We used to take regular day trips to the Whites, and when we stopped at covered bridges all the time. Oddly, we never drove across them because my mom had a bridge phobia. But because of that, we stopped and got out and walked them. And I think those hard looks and my wonder about my mom's fears are part of why I still have an ongoing interest in this work and how these bridges work.
Right. Was your mom afraid of just wooden bridges or all bridges?
Not all, but anything big. The exception for small ones were wooden bridges.
Yeah.
Usually she didn't get too worked up about a normal length bridge. But
I can see where some of those wooden bridges would be a little frightening if you were afraid to cross.
a lot of people are afraid of them.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, and some people should be, and they're not. Like people in big trucks should not. They should be afraid, but they're not. So let's jump right in. What is the Timber Framers Guild?
Well, the Guild is a nonprofit education-based trade group which educates its members about methodologies and process and how to make frames and projects happen. And secondarily, we work to make interested members of the public aware of how our almost lost trade still has capable practitioners.
And I know the Guild is a national organization, but it's based in New Hampshire. So what's the origin story of that?
Well, it came out of the Back to the Land movement of the 1970s. People were practicing timber framing for the first time in decades. The chain had been broken 50 years prior. And in the early 80s, a few books were published. And as isolated practitioners became aware of each other, there was word floated suggesting a meetup. That did come together in June of '85. Some 200 Folks attended from 27 states and 2 Canadian provinces, and
Wow.
the organization was formed. I don't know how they were so ready to make things happen, but they did. Officers were chosen, and they hit the ground running, the there was a newsletter published later that year, and then they just kept going and going, and
That's
we're still
that's
riding that
amazing.
wave today.
That's great. So why does the guild matter? Why is it critical?
Well, I can only speak to that from my own interactions with the organization. I joined only 2 years after it formed in 1987. I attended my first conference in '89, and though it be some years before the term was coined that we now use, that conference was structured around the Guild's first community build. Members, myself included, cut individual timbers to plan at our at home or at our individual shops, and then we brought and donated those timbers to those builds, and we built 2 side-by-side homes for for Humanity in York, Pennsylvania,
Nice.
and I, like everyone else in attendance, learned a whole lot and forged lifelong working relationships, and there was a fire stoked, and like many of us that week, we took that fire home and brought it to our individual projects and then to the next conference and to the next build. And we continue to do that and sharing our passion for what we do and how we do it and educating ourselves and those interested in what we do to become a part of all of who we all are.
Mhm.
Uh, Part of the importance that you ask after is that this trade, these trades were almost lost. And there were some 19th century carpentry treatises, but they didn't share enough information. And it took members, it took working carpenters, it took living memory to find the understandings that we had almost lost. And
Mhm.
it took years, and we don't yet possess all that was lost.
Mm.
When timber carpenters briefly had no one to share their understandings with. Um, but we're almost there again.
How did you learn carpentry? Did you learn from other people?
Timber carpentry?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean, yeah, you can only learn so much in a book. I read everything I could find.
Mhm.
Um, there was a there, there was a book published by a guy from New Hampshire, and everybody reads that book. But you can only learn so much on a written page.
Mm.
Um, it took um, doing. It took the doing, and it took me years to find a job doing this. Strangely,
Really?
yeah.
Wow.
I was making more money as a regular carpenter.
Okay.
Strange as that sounds. And I was confused as to why I couldn't get hired as a timber frame carpenter. It was because um, I was making more banging nails than than your than your average timber
Interesting.
framer was making in the late '80s.
Interesting. Do you think that's why so many people stopped doing it?
No, no, I
Okay.
think carpentry just changed.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was really only barns. So it continued on into the 1930s, but it was really only barns that were being timber framed anymore. And in time, that stopped. It was probably the war that broke that last link.
Okay. Interesting. And it wasn't until the '70s that people started to realize that those structures were being lost and the craftsmanship was being lost?
Yeah, and there was something about that that movement of people wanted to do things with their hands that made them feel a sense of accomplishment, I think. And you really do. There is something about timber framing that really gets people going, and that has a lot to do with cutting the joinery. It's
Okay.
it has a kinship with carpentry in general, but it's really cutting joinery is a end unto itself.
Okay. Can you explain that to the layperson?
I don't.
It's probably hard to explain without
Yeah,
showing.
I don't know. It really is a little bit of a spark of imagination. It really does catch people. Um, and I've never been able to even really understand it fully. I certainly can't put it to words
Yeah.
what that is, but it's something common in people. There's not a lot of timber framers,
Mhm.
but everybody that does this is particularly passionate about what they do.
Great. So speaking of that, does the guild have an apprenticeship program to teach the future about how to do this?
We do. It's going through a little bit of a transition at the moment. Um, it took years to pull it together, but we worked hard um, to prep and plan, build a curriculum, and work and apply to become a sanctioned apprenticeship program under the
Mhm.
Department of Labor, and that happened in the somewhere right around the end of the 2000 aughts, like 2009, I think it happened, and it was right in time for the Great Recession,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden, membership in the guild fell by in startling numbers,
Mhm.
and for the first time, there wasn't a whole lot of hiring going on. There certainly wasn't people hiring apprentices. People were struggling to keep their skilled help employed, and there was a um, audit. I I think it was every other year by the Department of Labor, and you're required to have 28 um, apprentices on the books, and we didn't. And they suspended the
Wow.
yeah, they
You didn't
suspend.
have 28 nationally?
We did not have 28 nationally
Wow. Wow.
during that period. Things were very slow. It
Right.
was a it was it was a hard few years for those of us in the trades. People couldn't borrow money. There was nobody building anything.
Mm.
Um, the program continues, but in house, and we're setting up regional panels to oversee things on not local, but in regional ways. Um, and that's the way it's going to continue. We mean for this program to continue, but it is no longer, sadly, Department of Labor sanctioned.
Got it. So with that in mind, what is the Heartwood School? Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Um, the Hartwood is a building skills school, and it has a long association with the guild, but it was only informal until recently. It belonged to a former guild director, and its campus was in the Berkshires. And we lost Will a, a short while ago, only a few years ago. As he fell ill, he put forward the idea that perhaps the guild might like to and be willing to run the school on into the future. And the guild purchased Hartwood. With that, the campus moved here to New Hampshire. There was
Oh,
a former timber frame shop in Alstead, became our new campus. And there we continue to teach building skills, timber framing.
Oh, that's
For
excellent.
most
I
of
didn't
our
realize it was there
Yeah,
in Alstead.
it's in a part of the world you know well.
I do.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, what is the community building project program?
Like that charter build in that conference in 1989 that I talked about, where we built a timber frame for humanity. The Guild continues to regularly take on projects for the opportunities they afford to teach layout and cutting skills to our membership, both long-term members and those new to the fold. Um, and we also do this to kind of reach out to the greater world and make timber framing known. To do this, we work with various entities, nonprofits, municipalities, educational groups, to create timber constructions for them to help those partners achieve their vision of communities bettered.
That's great. So, one example of that is the Wason Pond Bridge in Chester, which is the most recent authentic covered bridge built in the state. And I found out recently it's not the Wason, it's Wason. I
Oh,
made that mistake publicly. How did that project come about? How did we end up building a covered bridge in Chester?
that's a really interesting. The way that came together, I find particularly interesting because I've had a long relationship with something that made it happen. Um, but we got to start at the beginning. So the Wasson Pond Conservation and Recreation Area had been a campground there in Chester for decades. It had something of a rowdy, checkered past. Weekends would get kind of crazy there, and at some point, the owner flirted with the idea of selling the property,
Hmm,
and the town's conservation commission floated the thought of purchasing it. And when they did that, everybody saw the the wisdom in that. Both,
mm,
interestingly, the police department were foremost among the supporters, and they purchased it. There were some negotiations, and the conservation commission and the town purchased. I think it's 104 acres, something like that. Um, and they placed the acreage, the property in a conservation easement. It will always be open land.
nice.
And although, right, they got kind of a little hit. So right after they invested not an insignificant amount of money in that property and were starting to improve it. And then all of a sudden, the State Department of Environmental Services declared their dam, the dam that backs up Wason Brook and creates Wason Pond, to to no longer be capable of its function, that its service life was over.
Ah,
And they had to hire an engineering firm, design a replacement. That was built. Took some more money raising efforts. Um, and then once they built the dam, they needed to be able to cross it. So they needed a bridge. And
got it.
and the same chair, the chair of the Conservation Commission, who who uh, who proposed, who literally said, "Well, it looks like a perfect spot for a covered bridge." Uh, just a month or two later, attended the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance's Old House and Barn Expo. That was the connection that I mentioned when we started
Hmm.
discussing this. The guild has had a long, like, symbiotic relationship with the alliance,
Hmm.
and we've been building a a small timber frame to be raffled off at every expo since the 90s. And I've played into that many, many times. They ran into a former executive director of ours there, or this chair did, and started a conversation. And I think they just clicked. And our former director proposed a bridge as a community building project for the guild, and that was very quickly put into process. That that began with design. So the guild has a partner engineering firm, their sponsor even, who designed that bridge. Um, we created a timber list once we had a design in hand, and that was handed off to the Conservation Commission in Chester. They handed it off to a local logger, and he felled and milled all our timber free, did this pro bono
Wow.
for the town. The guild chose a leadership team, and both the instructors, myself and a former student of mine who from a long ago workshop, who had some bridge experience while he briefly lived in Vermont, was chosen as a co-instructor. And in addition to that, the guild chose a rigging team to plan and prep for the raising and launch, and that allowed the instructors to concentrate on fabrication.
Mhm.
They put out a call to arms. We just did that yesterday. The guild just issued a similar call to arms for an upcoming community building workshop. We, like always happens, we had a fantastic group of volunteers sign up and show up, and some of them were from as far away as British Columbia,
That's
and
great.
and the bridge happened in pretty short order.
Yeah. Do the volunteers have to be part of the guild? Do they have to be skilled?
It depends. It depends on what we're teaching. So normally
Okay.
we're teaching one of two kinds of layout, and it also depends on the project. Sometimes if there's a complex project, we're kind of shooting for a capable
Mhm.
set of volunteers, but not always. So it varies, and we try to mix that up.
Okay.
Here we were lucky. So you could say you're building a bridge, and people interested in bridge building are going to sign up. And most all of our attendees that go were skilled framers.
Mhm. Excellent. And the bridge was built using 19th century methods, and that's a phrase I use a lot when I talk about some of our historic covered bridges that have been restored over the years using 19th century methods. But what exactly does that mean?
Well, we didn't stick to tooling that was exclusively 19th century on that effort, but as these projects go, the tool the tools that were always efficient to this type of carpentry still are, and we that is particularly so for bridge writing. The layout lines we're cutting to are not necessarily at 90-degree angles to a timber surface, and power tools ride the timber surface.
Mhm.
Um, so you're losing if you don't have perfect 90-degree angles, and you're losing some of the efficiency of a power tool. And it's just sometimes easier to pick up a tool that is guided with your eye, with a practice eye and a practice hand,
Mhm.
and cut the line. That is, like I said, particularly true in in bridge building because everything's at a subtle angle because of the
Mhm.
camber we build to.
Mhm.
So the 90-degree angles are pretty rare in bridge joinery.
Right.
And bridge building also demands really tight tolerance fits, and that you get to that with you get to tolerance with edge tool with chisels. You're cutting, you're splitting lines when you cut them, and then you're cutting to that line as the only way to really achieve that is with edge tools.
Okay. And how was the project funded?
I'm told that everything was raised through donations there in town.
That's amazing. And it sounds like some people donated their time and effort and wood, for example.
Well, the timber came from the park, so,
Okay.
so they felled all those trees. There were some large standing trees there in the rec area, and that logger knew what we needed, and there was some really choice timber.
That's excellent. Do you happen to know what type of trees they were?
It was all white pine. White pine. It always surprises people, but eastern white pine is and was the species of choice for bridge building, and that's all about strength to weight. You want a bridge to
Okay.
be light per pound. White pine is a particularly strong timber. People don't expect that it will be, but it
Mhm.
is. It,
Right.
it used to be shipped into parts of the country like the Midwest. So all the bridges in Ohio and Indiana are built out of Michigan white pine
Mhm.
because it wasn't an indigenous timber to the area, but it was shipped in for that use
Interesting.
because it is the right timber for the job.
Got it. Interesting. And what was the community support like for this project?
I found it it was absolutely amazing. It's often the case, but I've this their level of support was beyond amazing. That started with the site support. We were working out of there's a rec center there at the park, where the kitchen was. Um, and that volunteer staff was great. Every night, uh, we were brought off campus to dinner parties all around town, hosted by different locals. Um, that's always a good thing we like to do to kind of get off and away for a few hours each evening.
Right.
Um, and then in the end, I mean, even after the build happened and things were packed up and most everybody went home, the the the, the volunteers that showed up every day to help clad the bridge, I mean, they just kept showing up. Um, Chester, Chester is a really great little town, and I can't say enough about their organizational abilities or the level of support they showed us. They were
That's
pretty
excellent.
amazing.
That's great. How long did the project take?
Well, there was all that work ahead of time, the design and the felling and milling of the timber. The scribe layout workshop that cut and assembled the individual trusses and then raised and launched the bridge. All that happened in 9 days.
Wow.
And then that group of locals, the same make it happen people that pulled this whole project together, um, hired myself, and I designed and built the portal trim and they wanted somebody to provide direction to those locals that just kept
Mhm.
showing up to do the roofing. There's a wooden roof on the bridge,
Mhm.
and to do the siding. It was just
Th
the support was amazing.
I think that's, part of what I found in this research and in talking in different communities about covered bridges. It's the the people in the community take such great pride in their covered bridges, and especially in the instances where they've been able to rebuild.
Yep,
Like, I'm thinking about the Corbin.
yep,
There are people in Newport that still today talk about how they could stop by and they could help, and that means so much to them still today, and it sounds like that happened there too.
it did.
Can people do that now? I mean, I'm thinking about the, Beeman Bridge project, and that was the most recent one I've seen, and just, can you just show up and help, or would OSHA say no to that at this point? Like, how does
Um,
that work?
we would have a hard time, liability wise,
Yeah.
letting somebody just volunteer to help. You would, though, although with Corbin, I know because I had a brief involvement with Corbin, and then went on to work with some of the locals that were involved. They hired locals to work on that bridge.
Mhm.
And, yeah, but you'd have to put them on the books. You couldn't just say, "Yeah, grab a hammer and start swinging."
Right. Do you know, are there plans to build any new authentic covered bridges in the state?
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned because there's a little we're having a rendezvous this summer, the guild is. That's happening in the town just east of me, in Gilmanton at the Griswold Scout Reservation, and we're planning to build a little tiny king post truss bridge for the Scout Reservation. That
I
that
love it.
that's just being designed now.
That's excellent. That's the best news ever. There's a bridge over here near me in Peterborough that's about to be closed. It's just a regular bridge, and everyone I know says, "Why don't you get them to build a covered bridge over here?" It's like, it's not that simple to do that, but
I wish it were.
I know. If you need another project, just take a look over here. Um, what I know this is a big question, but because I know how much you care about covered bridges, but what do covered bridges mean to you?
Hmm. Well, that's kind of easily answered and hard to answer all at the same time.
Yeah.
My interest in these bridges probably isn't anything or much like that of typical covered bridge aficionados. I my interests go to an underrealized side of them that not a lot of people are aware of. At least I don't believe there's that many people that are aware of. Covered bridges have a superior time proven thing. They have a really long service life, and
Mhm.
most people don't fully realize that. And when you do talk about how old some of them are, often people bring up how much money had to be spent on them.
Mm.
Um, and they think those expensive repairs that they sometimes see unfold are are why they're as old as they are. But it most of those expensive repairs come out of short bouts of neglect.
Mm.
Simple maintenance just fails to happen.
Right.
Um, and it doesn't take long. A roof leaks briefly, um, or the siding leaks, and nobody notices, and that sinks into the wood, and suddenly you have a rot problem. Um, but if the maintenance had been kept up, and that does happen, there are bridges that have not seen a lot of major inter eh, incursions where they'd had to do major work on them. Um, I just the service life thing is, we have a bridge here in New Hampshire that's been carrying traffic for almost 2 centuries.
Mhm.
They're a time proven thing, and that time proven value has been dismissed. And I think that is in large part because engineering has moved on. People don't see wood as a viable way, viable material to build bridges out of any longer.
Mhm.
Um, but for me, come on, bridges built using an ever renewable resource and their parts joined only with human ingenuity and the skills that are necessary to unify individual pieces into a well-crafted whole.
Mhm.
What is not to love? Part of me wishes there was a growing awareness of all this, the service life and that viability, and that and we see, like you were floating the thought there in Peterborough. I see no reason that we shouldn't be building modest span covered wooden bridges. Sometimes it confuses me. Um, and that means for me that timber framing's allied trade of bridge writing can and really should see a wider and a practiced revival like that of timber framing in
Right.
general.
Right. It part of and through part of my research, I've realized that the covered bridge community is very, very, very small, and there are so few people that seem to be skilled and or want to work on historic covered bridges. Is that true? Is it, um what is that community like, and are there people I know there are still people that are still learning, um, to do that work, but I know that when contracts come out to work on historic structures, the pool is really small, correct?
It is too small, particularly so for bridges.
Mhm.
And because there's only so many of these projects that come around, and you have to, you got you got to pull in capable people, or you need to make capable people. When we were out in California on the Bridgeport,
Mhm.
you know, they there was 2 people from New Hampshire, myself and Tim Andrews.
Mhm.
Were working on the Bridgeport, and they at some point they started to lean on me when the people we were working for finally came to the realization they needed more skilled carpenters. Um, they 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 impressed me into getting the word out, and I made a point of we hired on 5 additional framers besides Tim and I. Um, and I made a point of bringing 2 of them in that were younger guys and
Mhm.
from bridge rich states. I brought in a guy from Ohio that I knew had this stuff, and another guy from Oregon, and I'm hoping they both, fold in and make this part of their work.
Right. Well, and you mentioned that there's not that many projects. You're right, because there's not a lot of covered bridge work going on at one time, is there? So you must have to either travel and or supplement your income some other way, I would imagine.
Yeah, yeah, travel is a huge part of it. I've been, fortunate to work on a bunch of bridges in New Hampshire, but often you're required to travel
Mm,
distance. We've worked out of state as often as not. Um, and yes, you're only doing it. I mean, over the decades, I've done this a third of the time, and
okay.
that's saying something.
Mhm.
I'm not I'm not I'm not sure that. I wouldn't have guessed that I would be able to have said that 30 years ago. But yeah, maybe a third of the time. And the rest of the time, I'm just, um, it's normal. It's timber framing work
Right,
of a more typical type, homes and barns.
right. It w You've worked on a lot of New Hampshire's bridges, and what has that meant to you to be able to work on our historic bridges in your own state?
Part of my deep interest in our bridges is how is kind of New Hampshire centric. New Hampshire, despite how tiny a state it is, we're really overrepresented in trust type developers. There's a lot of guys from New Hampshire that have a handful, but more than you would imagine
Mhm,
that have patent trusses. And then we have Peter Paddleford's truss. He chose not to uh, patent his ideas. We have a connection, I I feel as a New as a framer from New Hampshire that I have that connection
mhm.
and I'm continuing it. I've learned a lot from every bridge that I've ever touched. Um, and it's kind of an honor. I see it as an honor to when we can take apart a bridge to and deeply explore it and find things that it doesn't share until you actually are looking at the tool marks of the carpenter that cut that bridge, however many decades ago that might have been.
Right, that's
And
amazing.
and additionally, I just kind of always see it as completing the circle. I like to believe that the things I've helped build over the last few decades will sometimes will share in time with future carpenters.
That's excellent. Do you have a favorite New Hampshire covered bridge?
Oh, I should have known that you were because wow. It has changed over time.
That's okay. You can have more than
Uh,
one too.
yeah. Well, I'm going to see, and I don't want to speak to why it has changed. Um, it's a paddleford because paddlefords are a, are a carpenter's bridge. I see the man as an underrealized genius. So it's not the same paddleford that it always was. If so, currently it might be the Sandwich.
Oh, nice.
It used to
The
be
Durgan?
it used to be Mechanic Street, and then my attitude shifted a little bit. And um,
I was just at the Durgan last weekend and, they finished the work that they did.
so now I'm pronouncing a bridge wrong.
Why? What did you say?
I said Durgin. Is it Durgan? Do they say Durgan locally?
Well, I think they do.
Okay,
Interesting.
good to know.
Huh. Well, you can pronounce them all different ways. It's Beement or Bement,
Yep, yep,
it's all different.
yep.
So, anyway, yeah, that's a nice bridge. It was nice to see it that they finished because it was closed for a while because it had been struck.
Yeah, there was some damage.
Yeah, so it's reopened and it looks nice. So how can folks find out more about the Timber Framers Guild?
Well, the easiest way is to just go to the website, tfguild.org.
Excellent. And anybody can become a member?
Yeah, membership is open to everyone. Um, if you click in on the website, there is a drop down menu at the top of the page. Just hit I want to, and then hit join.
Excellent.
Although, remember this: so benefits of membership in the guild are really best found, fully found, in being participatory.
Mhm.
Um, this is a community, and don't just join us. Join us at an event. one
Excellent.
of these community building projects.
Well, will your build project this summer be open for people to come visit
Will the
when you're building the covered bridge in Gilmanton?
Yeah, I would think people would be welcome, sure.
Excellent. You know I'm going to show up.
You're
Not going to
you
help though.
I'll hold you to it.
You don't want me to help. I can pretty much guarantee.
Oh, I think we might insist on it. So that's a little different than somebody showing up at any build. That's all about community, and
Okay.
you're already part of this community. So I'm gonna make you do something. I don't know what yet, but
Okay. As long as it's nothing that's going to hurt anyone, I'll be happy to help. And how can folks find you? You have an amazing blog, I might add. I didn't mention that. Um, Lots of great research. You've also taken a really deep dive on some of these bridges and the bridge rights. Can you tell people how to find you and your blog?
I think it's just bridgewright.wordpress.com.
Okay. I'll
Um,
put it in the show notes.
yeah,
Put the
I
link in
don't.
there.
It's really not at the top of my head or the tip of my tongue. But yeah, I don't maintain a website, but I do have that web presence, and there's some other things. There's some of those social media platforms. You can find me. Um, Click around, you'll find some contact information should anybody want to reach out.
Excellent. Well, I want to personally thank you for not only the work that you've done over the decades in preserving New Hampshire's covered bridges, but also for the help that you've provided me over the last 5, 6 years, 6 years now since I've been researching covered bridges and trying to learn about things that I did not know. And I appreciate your patience with me. You've explained truss designs to me. You've explained why some bridges are not specific truss designs and what to look for, and taught me a lot about the language of bridge, which was not my first language and it still isn't. But I'm a little more versed than I used to be, and I'm very grateful for your help. Thank you.
I was happy to help, and I'm glad you're out there. I'm glad you're a voice for this bridging community.
Well, I think what you said about how when you work on the bridge, how you're touching that craftsmanship from almost 200 years ago, and that's what I want people to understand when they visit a covered bridge, is that this bridge is not still standing by chance. It's standing because a group of people have been committed to preserving the bridge since it was built, and I think that's the takeaway I want people to understand when they visit covered bridges. They're not just to, drive over and squeal your tires on. It's there for you to value and to understand and to ensure that they stay, because a lot of communities could very easily tear them down. So
Yep.
that's
And
that's
I
what
and I do think you're helping people come to that understanding.
I hope so.
Glad you're a
Well,
voice.
thank you for talking to me today, Will.
Happy to do it. Thanks for the opportunity.
The Covered Bridges of New Hampshire podcast is created and hosted by me and recorded in Hancock, New Hampshire. The song Old New Hampshire was arranged and performed by Josh Black. Our introduction is courtesy of Greg Kretschmar. This podcast is a companion to my book, Covered Bridges of New Hampshire. You can learn more about the book, explore blog posts, view covered bridge videos and photographs, check event listings, and access an interactive covered bridge map at coveredbridgesnh.com. Follow Covered Bridges of New Hampshire on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for additional content and updates. If you enjoy the podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Kim Chandler. Thank you for listening.